Okay, we got two more states to go over, Maine and Vermont, and that will be it. Two reliably Democrat states. And Vermont more so than Maine, especially recently. Maine does their two-term Republican governor, Paul LePage, and the legislature, which is split now and was under Republican control for a very short time. They've done a lot better controlling spending. They've gotten a lot better. So Maine, even though both these states get a higher percentage of of all their operating revenue from the federal government than the average state. Maine leans Democrat. Vermont is solid Democrat, especially if you look at the last 12, 13 years of their legislature. Easily, Vermont is a very Democrat state. It's a progressive petri dish, much like California, the only outlier being Vermont. You don't need a permit to carry a concealed weapon. Uh-oh. Which might explain why Bernie Sanders is not insane on guns, as most Democrats are. So these are two Democrat states. Maine is a lean Democrat. Vermont is solid. And as you'll see from the data, I'm recycling my screenshots on New Jersey because Vermont and Maine are right up there. So just ignore that New Jersey's underlined and look at Vermont and Maine. So let's look at this real quick. Won't take long at all. Again, look, pay attention to the spending per capita. I've got all that data up there too. So, federal funds as a percentage of all Vermont spending, fiscal years 1990 through 94 average, 30.198%. National average for the same time frame was 24.868%. So Vermont, very Democrat state, sucking off the federal teat there. Uh-oh. But Vermont's a Democrat state. Uh-oh. Federal funds as a percentage of all Vermont spending, fiscal year 2005 through 2009 average, 26.474%. National average for the same time frame was 27.776%. So Vermont went down a little bit, and they were below the national average. And take a look at, well, I'll explain this later. I'll touch on it briefly. Vermont's spending per capita and how it is just exploded. And here we go with federal funds as a percentage of all Vermont spending. Fiscal years 2010 through 2014 average, 36.884%. National average for the same time frame, 31.85%. So Vermont was getting a lot more of their operating revenue, a higher percentage from the federal government than the average state, a lot more in the 2010 to 2014 time frame. If we use fiscal year 2005 beginning 7/1/2004 as our baseline and run to fiscal year 2014 ending June 30th, 2014, Vermont's spending per capita, surprisingly, is beyond the rate of inflation. Vermont's spending was in high gear until the 2008/09/perpetual recession began. Then it tapered off a bit. If we use fiscal year 2010 beginning July 1st, 2009, when the recession allegedly ended as our baseline, and go to fiscal year 2014 ending June 30th, 2014, the latter total is well beyond the rate of inflation. So Vermont spending has resumed its normal process of full speed ahead. Feel free to run all the numbers yourself as well. Vermont is spending so much per capita, they make California look like penny pinchers. And like I said, the recession was the only reason it went down, and they are spending no wonder they can't afford single payer. I think Vermont needs to go for single payer health care, and then they can go bankrupt and they should secede from the United States. I hope they do that. They should. So eventually Vermont's going to run. They're running out of other people's money as well, and they're still getting a lot of revenue, a higher percentage, as I said, of all their operating revenue from Washington than most states. So, and they're still out of money, and they still can't afford single-payer health care. The costs will explode. So, yeah, Vermont will not end well in Vermont. I'll tell you that. Now I'm moving on to Maine. Federal funds. Remember, Maine is a lean Democrat state. Federal funds as a percentage of all Maine spending, 1990 through 94 average, 27.52%. National average for the same time frame, 24.868%. So Maine, oh, there you go, sucking off the federal teat. Federal funds as a percentage of all Maine spending, 2005 through 2009 average, 32.156%. National average for the same time frame, 27.776%. So Maine again, Vermont's dropped below the average during that time frame, but then went back up. Maine has remained above the average the entire time. And again, pay attention to their spending per capita. Under Paul LePage and a Republican legislature, and now it's split, it has somewhat gotten under control. They're not, put it this way, Vermont is spending a lot more per capita than Maine. A lot more. I got all the figures there, of course, as per usual. Federal funds as a percentage of all Maine spending, 2010 through 2014 average, 34.672%. National average for the same time frame was 31.85%. So again, we've got these people, and I think I hear a lot more from Democrats. I'm sure there's Republicans that do. These Democrat states are sucking off the taxpayers' dollars and Republican states and vice versa. What do you expect from a system like this where Washington is so involved? They're going to launder money. So if you've got a senator on a certain committee who has a lot of pull and says, I'm not going to let this get out of committee unless I get my pork project. Like maybe a Chuck Grassley. Well, if I don't get my pork, I'm going to block your pork. And they all get together, and what do? They screw the taxpayer. Politically speaking, of course. So we all get shafted, and Washington is turned into an ATM machine where there's just tons of money going in and out of there all over the place. It is being laundered, folded, spindled, and mutilated. And they're picking winners and they're picking losers, and some states do very well, and some states don't. So it's not a matter of these Republican states are sucking off the Democrat state taxpayers, or the Democrat states are sucking off the Republican state taxpayer teat. It's not that. It's the system itself, people. Washington is too big for its britches, and you can't make it work right. The system needs to be reformed. It's like, I don't know how, a very good analogy. You don't want to fix this broken down car that's rusted out. You want to junk it and get a new one. That's kind of an analogy that would dovetail. But as long as Washington keeps doling out this money, you're going to see states. And isn't it insane that states are getting about a third of their operating revenue from Washington, and it keeps going up, almost a third? Who's going to bail Washington out? And as I said earlier, in one of my earlier videos, with all these mandates Washington yokes people with, that, well, if you do this, we'll give you a bunch of taxpayer money. So if states expand their Medicaid programs into oblivion, and states that didn't and maybe don't have as many people on Medicaid and aren't throwing money out the door like it's going out of style, those taxpayers in those states get shafted for states who expanded their Medicaid programs, for example, because they knew Washington's going to pick up the tab. The system needs to be reformed. Vote liberty, vote libertarian, and have a nice day.